Welcome to Salento with Love. I'm Davide Mengoli. I'm so excited. It is the beginning of, actually almost at the middle of the month of February. My voice is a bit low. I've just recovered from a little bit of a cold and a laryngitis, but I just couldn't wait to share with the world really the beginning and the end of an extraordinary giving back life to a palazzo that has been sitting here for a while, narrating an incredible story. When I think of buildings, I think of houses, I think of big mansions, I think of a castle. I see them as big containers that for years, decades, centuries, they were there listening, protecting, almost embracing their content, which were the people that lived through the years using that container. Yes, because that's really what a building is. It's an incredible container of emotions, thoughts, and soul. So through the refurbishment process, I always feel that it is very important to bring the comfort of the 21st century, but at the same time, not losing some of those elements that allow to those voices. I'm not going to scare anybody because I don't refer to those things, but to those thoughts, those dreams and feelings that live through a building to come through in a different way. So I really hope that you enjoy this process. It's a complex one. It's not one that I'm afraid of, but it's one that makes me feel excited. Just the idea of being able to be part of it is just something that makes me feel extremely excited. So what are we talking about? Well, we are talking about Palazzo Angelini, embedded really in a network of beautiful mansion houses, palazzi, built, some of them in the 16th century, some of them in the 17th century, and some of them, like this one, probably a little bit earlier in parts and a little bit later in other parts. So really through this refurbishment, we're going to uncover, we're going to discover, we're going to go from refurbishment to restoration. We're going to go from archaeological findings and things that really would allow us to put the puzzle together of how important this palazzo was in centuries or through the centuries. Once upon a time, probably a market. Just the crest of the family tells us so much. A shipping family bringing from the Americas some of the goods that was so new to this part of the world. And then really the commerce, when it developed with the oil. Can you imagine this shipping company having ships and sending the oil all over Europe and using this palazzo maybe as a base? It's so incredible when I think of the wealth and how things have changed and how now we are left with buildings screaming because they want to tell us a story. And so through this process, I'm not really going to talk about too much, well, the essence of plastering and underflooring and doors and windows, because you probably have seen that so many times, but the essence of life that gets transferred into newer generations through the changes, through the different ways of living, and how these beautiful containers of life have delivered today something that we need to cherish. So I'm extremely privileged to share with you the refurbishment of Palazzo Angelini. Now, should we go and take a look around? So this courtyard was the center, really, of the commerce. But it's interesting because what we will discover through the process is that things may have changed in terms of how the building worked back in the centuries. Maybe this was open afterwards and the access was through the back where the garden was. Maybe those buildings at the back were not there and they came afterwards. So commerce and goods were shipped in, where really the 17th century and the 18th century we started to see really the need of showing off the wealth by bringing together these majestic buildings with beautiful facades, with incredible long balconies in cast iron, and really special frames all carved into stones. And so really it wasn't until the late 17th, 18th century that we started to see what we see today when we wander the streets of certain parts of Italy, Puglia, Sicily, where really the wealth was so much. Where was it coming from? Agriculture. So maybe this came afterwards, and you can imagine just bringing the horse and cart in, and maybe tied it in to one of these hooks where the horse will be just there. Maybe another one over there, can you see it? Maybe another one over here. Yes, this is exactly what they were used for. But then changes, like for example, we've discovered already that is where the grain was going in, and this was a dispenser. So they will open these up, they will put a sack, lift these up, and it was a way of bringing the grain and then selling it. So already this courtyard is telling us so much about the history of this building. And then what was happening down here? This huge space underground. What was it really happening there? Well, I think we will discover through the course of the work what was really happening here. We have some ideas of what was happening here, but we're a large space. Now, what about the rest of the building where people really were enjoying life? Well, let's explore the rest. I am now in the kitchen. Now these guys that did really bake a lot of bread. This, can you see the size of this? I've never come across an oven so big. I mean, it's just incredible the size of it. And now talking to people that are a little bit older than me, it's interesting because they still remember back in the 1950s and 40s that they used to bring the flour here or the bread that was already fermented so it could actually be baked. So it was almost like a communal bakery at one stage where people could actually take advantage of the facility that these big buildings and these big families had made available for people in the town. So it's very special. But then the features that go from the doors and the windows and the beautiful garden and the star-shaped ceiling really tell us so much about the wealth and the beauty and the aesthetics. How important for these people it was really to have that element. Because you see, back in the days, it wasn't about comfort because technology was not there to introduce the comfort. It was about style, it was about design, it was about the quality of the elements that were chosen to actually embellish a building. So maybe the type of wood that it was used to make the doors and windows, maybe just simply the handle, which he was made by hand and forged in brass, and he was different from everyone else. Maybe the floor that was chosen, which he was specifically baked, maybe that cementino or that cotto, especially for you. Today, we then move on to perhaps fancy lighting and domotics and smart homes and heating and cooling. But back in them days, no, it was about really having those facilities. So my oven is bigger than yours. That's really what it was about. And really, this is a big oven. And through the course of this restoration, you're going to see how this oven will potentially fire back again, giving life to the house and providing food for everyone who comes through Palazzo Angelini. Now, we're about looking at the rest. Let's go. Yeah, what a grand space. Definitely this came afterwards, this area. You know, it was just so important to impress by opening the doors and really the location. I can't step out for 1 second without people looking. It's fantastic. Was like the prime location. Still today, the prime location. You just step out and you're in the main square. Back in them days, this is where the business was done in the square. I'm old enough to remember actually walking past the square about many years ago and seeing loads of people looking to get work for the next day, working in the land. So you can imagine for people that were merchants in the agricultural business, how crazy it was to be so close to where everything was happening, and how important it was to impress their people and guests, and maybe suppliers and workers. But probably workers never made it up here into these majestic rooms, but probably business partners. And so it was really important to bring them in. And then these very high doors, big shutters, beautiful cast iron, the poetry that came through the flowers made in cast iron. He was just so special. And it was the only way of showing really that they were very important families. So great today to get back into this space, to see things with their eyes of them people, and still with elements, furniture and some of those elements that can just give you the idea of how grand these families were, the way they were living. They had a comfortable bathroom, a Victorian style toilet. So they had a really comfortable way of living back in the days. Maybe a little bit cold in the winter. Yes, maybe, because today is freezing. I'm inside here in the middle of February and there is no fireplace here, and radiators, which you see behind me, they were probably introduced only in the 60s. So until 60s, really, these houses were probably warmed by just using charcoal and these containers, which they would be scattered in the room. to actually produce and irradiate the heat sufficient or probably insufficient to just stay comfortable. Just put another layer on. Now, what about the rooftop? Let's go. I just wanted to share with you this journey, and hopefully this leap in time back into history will help everybody who's thinking about embarking on the journey of restoring, refurbishing, bringing back life to a building, to have the right motivations. I think it's a sense of responsibility when we approach a building like this with so much history, to really remember elements that are important to bring back and to actually give and donate to future generations. So again, it will be an honor for me to be involved through the process in making sure that comfort is established, design and quality is established, the usage of the right material, the attention to details, but also ultimately delivering something that would just make us go wow, and generations and future generations can trace it back right to the beginning of his existence. So I hope you have enjoyed this first episode, and also I must say I was so happy to be part of the purchasing process of this particular building, which he was here left abandoned, and not many realtors managed to put the deal together because it was divided between two families, two realtors, and it was pretty complex. And so a lot of people that rather see it here empty and really going into ruin rather than trying to do something to make it come together. So I was very, very happy to be part of that process that has allowed for this to be again something for people and generations to enjoy, but also to become a vehicle that will allow some, I haven't used the word extraordinary that much, but in this case I think it's very appropriate to have some extraordinary people coming to inhabit and use and build their dreams and build their memories in Galatina. So that's probably the part that I'm excited the most. So thanks very much to everybody for the support, the trust, and for allowing me to be the catalyst to some amazing things. Well, Enjoy the rest of the episodes. Don't get lost in the details. And not every house needs to be a palace. No. Small is good. Medium is good. Large is good. Everything is good, providing you're happy. So stay with that thought. Enjoy the rest of the series. Palazzo Angelini will be an amazing journey. Subscribe to the channel. Press the little bell. Thank you very much. And stay safe wherever you are.